Hey everyone, I just want to kind of review and go through a quick tutorial on what you're going to be doing for your micropipetting at home. You've got this instruction manual that you obviously can read through, and you're going to kind of go stepwise through here. You'll also be doing a pipette by numbers, so there's some designs in there for you to choose from, and that will be one of your assignments for today. And it's mainly just allowing you the opportunity to experience some micropipetting, which is a really important um, ability in microbiology and biotech. So you'll also want to have, a glass of water or a cup of water nearby, and then obviously, so if you have mistakes or you want to clean off anything, you can have paper towels and that sort of thing. But you've got your loading gels, yellow, red, and I've got blue over here as well. We've got the Petri dishes, which are used for the color by number practice later on. There is a practice card with the different microliter volumes, and this is the loading gel. This is the example one. This loading gel is hydrophobic, so you want to run it underwater. You can see in some of these, there's water already submerged in there, and that will just make it easier for when you load your samples into it. And so what is, one of these gels, what's its use for, and how do we make it, that sort of thing. It's used with this agarose gel, and it's used in gel electrophoresis, where basically you can load DNA samples, right, specific genes. You can load all sorts of different solutions, from crime scenes and that sort of thing, if you're trying to separate out its components and figure out an analysis of what you're working with. You can load them in the center if the samples might be positive or negative and travel different directions, or we know DNA is always going to travel in the negative direction, so you could load it on one end and see the different banding patterns and genes that are linked to a DNA sample, which is really, really cool. Usually this is more like a jello consistency, so it's pretty fragile when you're working with it, so you want a steady hand and you want to really have solid micropipetting skills when you're working with it. So you can kind of see some gels that I've already loaded in there. And we'll do this multiple times in our class, working with gel electrophoresis, running an electric current through it so that you can separate out the genetic components. You've got two fixed volume micropipettes, right? So you have a red one at 4 microliters with some micropipette tips, and then 10 microliters, and an extra bag. And all of these are interchangeable tips. And usually you get a tray where these are standing straight up, and then you don't have to worry about, using your hands and loading them onto the actual micropipette. So you're eliminating any additional microbes. So you can kind of see one that I have loaded already. And usually, you just jam it right into the tray, and then you can eject them too, so that you don't have to touch them at all. There's a button on there for that. So that would be the red plunger and the green plunger. And on mine, this is a variable volume micropipette tip, so I can change it. Over here on the side, there's a little knob where I can twist it and adjust it. You can see that the numbers change. So I can get up to 10 microliters in here, and down here is a decimal place. So this would read 3.6 microliters. And so I can have some specific amount as I'm working through. Now, I already have a little bit of gel loaded in here. I'm going to try and get it out, but it's probably not going to work. But that's fine. You'll get the gist of it all. And then, again, I already kind of showed you the ejector, but you can use that and use a different micropipette tip every single time you're working through. We're going to work on the card first and do some practice micropipetting and kind of see how our steady hand is. With the variable micropipette tip, those of you at school, I gave you one of those so you can kind of mess with it. There are 2 stopping points on here that you'll just want to get used to as you're working with the variable one. So when I press down initially, right, that stopped right there, and that's going to represent, the 3.8 microliters or whatever I had it set at. What was it? 3.6. That's 3.6 microliters. If I were to push all the way through, that would be the 10 microliter setting. At any rate, when you load them, you're going to push all the way down and hold it. I'm going to just use water, right? Plunge and let it fill all the way up and release, right? And then when you go over to your card, you can use the plunger and only stop at the initial stop point, right? And so that's my first one. And then you have to remove whatever you have left. So you can, you know, since this is water, it's fine. Just shoot it back in there and then reload and then use that stopping point again. And we're just gonna, oops, I messed that up because I'm looking through my camera. So there we go. You can just kind of see how consistent you are with your micropipetting as you go along. That was a bad example. Promise I'm way better at this in person. So you can see some consistencies, and then you can kind of reverse micropipette. Right, hold the plunger down, see if you can grab all of it back, and sometimes you leave, you know, a drop or so behind, but that was pretty good, right? And then just put it back into the container that it came, or you have plenty of dye where you don't have to worry about you know, using it, losing it, whatever. We've got plenty of it to go around. Okay, so you can practice that, and then you can practice the different ones here. Obviously, you don't all have variable ones where you can do that. My at-home people specifically. But it just gives you a practice. And then the loading gels, right, you can go through and do the same thing. And there's some settings for you to go at. When you do this, you want to go at an angle. Again, normally this is jello-like. So you go at an angle. You don't jam all the way to the bottom because you would break through the entire gel. So you kind of go at an angle towards the bottom. And these you can kind of test and feel where that bottom is. And then release the gel into the loading well is what we call it. So you can kind of see that one sitting in there nicely compared to the other ones that bubbled out, right? And you can, you know, practice it with different sizes and different locations. And again, you would have to get, you know, a new sample each time as you go through. But kind of fun and a really, really important technique needed for some of our upcoming labs and stuff like that. And again, you'll be doing one of these pipette by numbers and showing me the design that you come up with or create on your own or use one that's pre-made in there. So have fun with this today and show me what you got. And I forgot to show you what it would look like when you do the, you know, buffer one with the loading gel. So what I did is I have my Petri dish here and I put my loading gel in there and then I filled it up with water. And so normally we have like this salty solution buffer that's in there when we're working with them. And so you could practice on what that feels like with having like some sort of liquid that you're working with, again, with the angling of the pipette into the correct well, and then, you know, pushing the loading gel into it. And again, proper loading, it will sink down to the bottom, as we can kind of see in these couple. And then you'll notice right away, if you miss the well or you put too much into it, it'll just kind of wash away. And whatever is left over will stay in that well or drop, but the rest of it will just kind of wash away. So that's pretty easy, but just kind of be careful because you have to fill it up pretty high to get that water to kind of go straight across the hydrophobic gel. So